editorial board says, quote, the Biden crowd only sold the ability of the COVID vaccines to provide long-lasting protection against infection, but real.
Hey, Cuddy, how are you?
Hey, Dave, great. Yourself?
Good. I'm trying to find out what my password.
International war. Does not agree with the fact that now it is proposed to resolve questions of security, collective security, without the Russian Federation. This will not work. So what will work? Do we know that? Josh, it seems like the next step is getting to this bilateral meeting in Zelensky and Putin. But as is the case often, the Russians kind of starting the pot even before.
Yeah, the devil's in the details. And look, there was a lot of pomp and circumstance in the last week, whether it was the European leaders, Zelensky coming to the White House. It was a remarkable moment in the White House. The meeting in Alaska was also made for the history books. But it seems like we're still kind of stuck in place, and Russia still is not making the concessions necessary to really move this negotiation along. And a lot of the hope for concessions haven't materialized. So I thought it was notable that JD Vance in that interview.
Hey, everybody joining. Somebody's got their hot mic on.
Occupied as part of the negotiation. That
Is on
I can't imagine Ukraine.
Fox News, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, Gerald, good evening. Hey, Steve, Bill.
Yeah, good evening from Arkansas.
Yeah, how are things out that way?
Hot and dry, really dry.
Really? Gosh, we've had our fair share here in Virginia. I'll try to send some your way.
Man, we could use it. It's been we're borderline drought, and some of the yards and territory isn't borderline. I have a 15-acre place here, mostly of Ozark hardwoods, and some open meadow, about 6 acres, I guess, that I keep mowed like a lawn or a park. And I'm usually mowing every 8 to 10 days in the summer and growing season, and I haven't mowed in a month. The grass is not even thinking about growing.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Well, ours has been just the opposite. I feel like I got to mow every week or I'm way behind on it. Um, I guess I wish we could send that Aaron storm your way a little bit, or at least some of the rain.
Boy, isn't that the truth? You know, Dave, I was in Greenville, South Carolina for 12 years, which is the northwest corner up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So we didn't see a lot of beach type impact from the storms, but we did get the inland overrun if it came on inland, and got mountain rain and washouts and things like that. But we're far enough out here in the center of the country now. We just watch it on the news.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Well, I hope you get some rain, Gerald. That dry spell is not good for anybody.
Well, meanwhile, it's good flying weather though, Dave.
Oh, good. Good. We've had some decent weather too, between the rain, but we're actually hoping to cool down here a little bit. The humidity's been a little oppressive, and I think it's going to get under control here in the next. I think part of this storm will help once it's passed. But anyway,
But while we're on the
uh,
weather discussion, that's what happens when you have hot and dry, really dry. We've had, I think, 104 yesterday on the heat index, and 100-degree weather, not often, but 2 or 3 days out of the last 10 here temperature wise. But the forecast next week is for a break. We're going to go back down into the mid to high 80s.
good. Oh, good. Okay. Bill, how are you doing? maybe not on yet. Steve, how about you?
Steve is good. Greetings from Central Michigan.
Yeah, nice and moderate temps up there, Steve.
It has not necessarily been moderate. A lot of 80s and humidity, although we are finally getting a break in the weather. And Monday morning, I think our low is forecasted to be 47 degrees. So quite a change from the
Oh,
we've been having.
oh my gosh. That actually sounds good. Putting on a hooded sweatshirt.
Well, maybe for you down there, but up here it still means shorts and t-shirt. But
Okay.
nice that we're not sweating while we're wearing them.
Yeah, okay, I gotcha. Yeah, I gotcha. Cuddy, I'll stand by for a little bit if you want to wait and see if we have any other attendees.
Yeah, we'll give it about 5 more minutes to see. I sent out another reminder, but it's hit and miss. Depends on how many people we get every week or every quarter.
Sure,
So
sure. Well, I promised I would. Cuddy asked me to give some flying stories. So, Cuddy, what I thought I would do is start with those. I'll give it a couple more minutes here, but I I really had a great career in the Air Force, and a lot of it, actually, most of it was in the Air National Guard. I was on active duty with the Air Force, full-time guardsman for many years. But I got to fly three of the greatest fighters I think ever built. Of course, I didn't get to fly the latest one, the F-35. So I'm sure the pilots that are flying that think it's probably greater than any prior to it, and I certainly understand that based on some of the stories that I've heard that that jet can do. That and the F-22 also, I heard some great stories about. But I'll give it a couple of minutes yet, Cuddy, and we'll get into it. You have other issues you want to discuss, right?
right, like I said, we'll give a few more minutes. So I'm not jumping into it and having to go back over it. But yeah, we're just gonna have a few agenda items that we're gonna go over. One, introduce you, let you tell a little bit about your story, and then talk about how STEM flights came to be, some of your Air Force stories, and then any of your anecdotal stories about STEM flights that missions that you've flown. So I'll introduce you when we get into that point. Can y'all see
Okay.
the presentation? Is it being presented right now?
Yeah, we see it.
I just gotta change it to the presentation mode.
Well, this is Jerry, Dave. Since Carly's already heard all your stories, I'm sure we probably won't get a chance to greet her or say hello, but please give her the greetings from especially up here in Arkansas.
I will surely do that, Gerald. You are one of her favorites, and it's always been very helpful. And I got the back brief on the Ray Foundation. I'm sorry they didn't come through for you, but we can keep trying and working those for you.
Yeah, appreciate that. It's not a surprise. I talked to another guy whose organization had applied and missed the first year, and then got 4 grants in a row after that. So we're not dead yet.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we'll have Carly on one session too, just to talk about what she does on the development director side, and some of the projects she works on and that we all work on together. And if there's any questions on how the student development side, we'll give we're not quite 5 minutes in, so we'll give a few more minutes. People are still popping on since we're all over the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast, to try to pick a time that would be fairly conducive, from people getting home, beating traffic and all that other good stuff. So.
Okay. Yeah, I want to say hi to Rick Turley and Rick Hunt. And I see Wesley's note taker and Diana's note taker. And Fred.
And Fred's over in northwestern Arkansas.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you.
So yeah, we'll give a few more minutes and then we'll jump into it, and I'll go over the agenda items. Some of them are repeats, but we have two fairly new ones to go over, and then we'll introduce Dave properly, and then we'll talk about we'll have some Q&A for Dave, and then we'll go into the agenda items and Q&A for that, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll give about 5 more, or about a minute or two, and then we'll get going. And this is recorded too. We're going to start posting these on the website for future reference. Looks like we're about 5 minutes in on the nose, so I'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. Thanks for all you who are able to attend, and anybody who's going to be watching the video in the future. My name is Austin Campbell. Most of you already know me. I'm the Director of Flight Operations. I go by Cuddy. I deal with all the pilot onboarding, vetting, mission coordination, and anything else that has to do with getting the students paired up with the pilots and following up, and as well as helping develop our database. So tonight we're going to talk about one of our newer program developments, which was kind of a request by some of our pilot mentors, as well as some of our students. And that's basically, in addition to the mentorship that's provided during the flight, we're expanding to have additional mentorship opportunities where if a student has a question about a certain career field and we have somebody who has that expertise or knowledge, we'll put a request out to the pilot community, and we'll ask them if they would like to help the individual on their professional development goals towards whatever career that is. And same thing for students who have completed it. They'll talk about helping other students through the program. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our founder. I'm going to leave our mission up there so everybody pretty much knows what it is. But our founder, Dave Brubaker, retired general, brigadier general from the U.S. Air Force. He started STEM flights, I believe, in 2019, and we've been going strong ever since and growing. Dave provided a few snapshots of his Air Force career there that you see on the screen. So without further ado, I'll let Dave provide more insight to who he is and how STEM flights came to be. Dave?
So, Cuddy, thank you. And thanks for everybody that's tuned in and everybody that might look at this later. You all are the heart of STEM flights, and we don't get much done without your help. So first comment is thank you. I appreciate your generosity and your willingness to help motivate the next generation of aviation, not just pilots, but all kinds of technical skills and interest and careers. And we can talk a little bit about some of those flights. I want to review for those that don't know how I kind of got this started. And I say I got it. It was sort of a family effort. Carly was very helpful. My son Trent was very helpful. But when I was in the Air Force, my last few years, I was in the Pentagon and involved in a number of programs that required some pretty science-based technology to advance our cause. And I soon figured out that the United States did not have all the science talent that it needed, and some of the things that were required, and a lot of it was software, but other things, including hardware, had to be outsourced to overseas in some cases not countries that you would care to have helping you with your defense needs. It was frustrating for the Air Force. It was frustrating for me. And I know that we've gotten better at that, but it made an impression on me. And I I wanted to motivate kids to pursue careers in sciences and technology, and STEM was kind of the buzzword at the time, and it actually still is. So, you know, after I retired, I got into general aviation and started flying kids. And my kind of niche was making them work. They didn't get a free flight. They had to do something to help me with radios and navigation, checking weather. I, of course, let them always fly. We talk about careers. It was an interactive experience, and I did that for a number of years and started eventually hearing back from some of the kids that I flew that they basically said that they were, because of those flights, they were interested, had become interested in aviation or becoming a pilot. Some of them even went into the military. And as my kids and I discussed this over time, we made the decision, well, why don't we try to institutionalize this with a nonprofit that would, you know, get other pilots doing it, because it was so rewarding to me to get that kind of feedback. Well, like many of you, you probably have done a lot of young eagle flights. And I don't want to knock the program. I think it's a great program, and but it's basically been unchanged for about 30 years, and it's give a kid a ride. It's all about the numbers. And I over time kind of became frustrated with it. In fact, I really closely monitored my last 10 Young Eagles flights, and I would say of the last 10, 2 of them were kids that really were interested in what was going on and asked questions. And I felt like many of the others really didn't care. A lot of times the parents would drop them off and leave. And I felt a little bit like a babysitter. And one of the kids that I flew in the last 10 had flown 5 times. He had no interest in being a pilot or really airplanes at all, but he really loved flying and wanted to fly in as many different airplanes as he could. Anyway, that kind of motivated me to also start STEM flights, where, as you know, it's a one-on-one. You know, you get a kid that has some motivation, and I realize that that is varies widely, but at least they've had to do some homework. They had to do a letter of recommendation, and they show up interested in what you're doing, and you give them personalized time. And I'll also say that many of us do a STEM flight and a Young Eagles flight. So we log them both and get credit for both, and still continue to help the Young Eagle program. So after we started the nonprofit, we wanted to get more pilots, and over time we got some sponsorship initially from the Ray Foundation, and then some other nonprofits. We had a pretty good showing of donors that were interested in aviation, liked what we were doing, kind of followed what we had done. And I'll tell you that is, we're struggling right now with those, just based on the times and the economy. But we feel like our program is so ingrained now and popular, and maybe we're not growing as fast because we don't have the staff or all the funding to do all the events that we'd like to, but we do continue to grow. We have a weekly meeting, and every week there are new kids and there are new pilots. So our momentum continues, maybe not at the same level that it did a couple of years ago when we were better funded, but it still continues to grow. So I love it. I mean, if I didn't have to do paperwork and taxes and reports and all the things it takes to keep a nonprofit, I would fly more, but I still am able to do about 60 flights a year, and it's my favorite thing to do at STEM flights. I'm sure you guys have had and gals have had all kinds of experiences, and I want to share just one tonight, and that was a kid who's and believe me, some of the kids I fly are much better than others and much more prepared and much more interested. This kid I would have pegged as the least interested kid that I've ever flown. Very much introvert, very much a kind of stuck close to mom. In fact, I'm pretty sure mom probably did the letter of recommendation and all the other things required. But I was okay with that. We met up at the airport, and I could tell he was slightly disinterested. But he was there. And then when I said, okay, after the brief, we're going to go fly, he wanted his mom to go. Well, I only had a 2-place airplane then, and I'm like, yeah, no, this is you and me, and we're going to go do this. And he was close to not doing it, and with some encouragement from his mom, he did. He got in the airplane and did it, and we flew. And I will tell you this: after about 10 minutes into the flight, and he had flown for about 5 minutes of it, it was like a different kid. You would not have recognized the same kid. He became enthusiastic. He became interested. He loved it. He was now asking questions. A complete turnaround. We did the mission. It was about 45 minutes, and got back, and we did the debrief, which they were a little pressed for time, but went ahead and left, and I wasn't sure how to take it, except that I knew he had been a little bit more motivated. But anyway, I got a letter from his mom shortly after, and just an outpouring of appreciation for what that did for that kid. She said that he had struggled in school. He didn't like school. He didn't like any of his subjects. He told his teachers that he would rather not try than try and fail. So that was sort of how he was tackling life. His home life, I think, was great. His mom was great, but he was a stepson. It was a broken marriage at first. Anyway, she just went on to describe that his grades had already improved. He was enthusiastic. He had done something and that gave him confidence that he never thought he could do. And I'm sure you find that true with many of the kids that you fly. It's not so much that they wanted to become a pilot after the flight, but that they actually did something so unbelievable to them, and that it basically changed their life. Once they flew an airplane and understood it and discussed it and had somebody praise them and encourage them, they could do anything in their head, which is exactly what we're trying to do. And of course, I want them leaning towards science, but that was the best letter I ever got, and it was a long letter, as the mom described the change, and the letter came within, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks after the flight. I'll never forget that kid, because I thought he was going to be the dumbest shit kid I've ever flown, and it turned out that he was the most impressed. And listen, I'm sure you guys get letters too, and I do, and notes from moms, but that particular one for me really hit home. So I'm sharing that. I promised Cuddy that I would talk a little bit about those airplanes that are on the slide there. The hero shot of the F-16, of course, was the last aircraft I flew. And after the other two, the F-100 first, the F-4, the F-16 was very much a sports car compared to the other ones. But I love the other ones, and I'll hit on them briefly. But the F-16, it was a high G aircraft. And, I didn't start flying that till I was in my 40s. And before you can fly it, you have to go to the centrifuge and go through training. And you have to pull 9 Gs. If you don't pull 9 Gs in the centrifuge, they're not going to allow you to go to checkout school in the F-16, and you get a 9G pin. Well, I went. I'm not a tall guy by any means, and not particularly stocky. Um, and I have kind of short legs, and my the guys that I went to, I noticed were a lot taller than I am. But anyway, I got in there, and they filmed it, and you did warm-ups, and you do it with your G suit on, and you also do it with doing the kind of a grunting maneuver that they teach you. And so I did it, worked up to the 9 Gs and got my 9G pin. And a much more experienced pilot was next, but he was a tall, lanky guy. And if you think about it, the what happens if you don't pass is you pass out. And at that time we were calling it the funky chicken. So you would not just pass out, your body would jerk around and for a couple of seconds till the G's came off, and then it could be 4 or 5 seconds before you came to. In fact, we've lost aircraft like that guys will over G, pass out, and then the airplane goes on control or hits the ground. They actually did a recent I say recent, probably now about 5 years ago, modification that the F-16 later models have, that if that happens, if you let go and the aircraft is in a dive or uncontrollable situation, it'll correct itself and give you time to come to. Anyway, so this tall, lanky guy gets in there and does the warm up. Well, he didn't even make it past 6 Gs, and he was having trouble. And it was the most hilarious video, because we all got to watch everybody's video afterwards. This guy, he looked like a disco dancer gone awry in this F-16 seat in this centrifuge. And I just will never forget that. And it just was interesting to me, the distance between your heart and your brain is very much deciding your tolerance for high Gs. The F-16 seat is reclined slightly to aid the blood flow to your brain when you're under high Gs. But if you're a tall guy, you're at a disadvantage. And it helps. We had vests and we had G suits, but there's a very aggressive grunting maneuver that you do to help also. So that's my F-16 story. F-4 real quick. Cuddy, don't let me take too much time here. Most of you probably know the F-4. It's just an iconic fighter. The Navy bought it first in the early 60s, and then I think a little reluctantly, the Air Force and the Marines ended up with it in the 70s or late 60s, actually. Very much a Cold War kind of jet. I loved the F-4. It was two-seater. You had a weapon system operator in the back seat. Some people called them navigators, which they felt insulted by that because they actually worked the radars and the missiles. The F-4 came out originally without a gun, and Vietnam the missiles were not all that reliable when they first were matched with the F-4, and in the end of the end, you would get into a dogfight, and without a gun, you're in a dogfight without a gun, and the other guy's got a gun, which isn't good. So the Air Force, in their wisdom, put a 20 millimeter cannon in the nose. The picture you see there is the F-4E model, which we flew in Fort Wayne with the 20 millimeter gun, which made a big difference in Vietnam. Even I think some of them saw action there. I love the F-4. It was a Mach 2.2. I actually checked out as an FCF pilot, and I got to fly it at Mach 2.2. We would do FCFs to make sure that the big thing about the Mach 2 runs would be the ramps had to program the big inlets on each side had a kind of a ramp that would decrease the size of the inlet, so the engines could take subsonic air because they wouldn't operate with supersonic air going down that intake. And it was part of the FCF, our functional check flights, to make sure those ramps were programming properly. And I can't tell you how much fun it is to do a Mach 2.2 run in a clean F4, because that's normally what we did it in. But I want to tell just a quick story about that. I was deployed to a Canadian base on Victoria Island. I think it was called Comax, and we were doing, this was in the 80s in the F4, and we were doing work with the Canadian Air Force. And at that time, they were flying F-101 Voodoo fighters that were, Century series older aircraft. And that was their interceptor. And at the time, AWACS was relatively new, and the Air Force AWACS would fly overhead, and we were using British Columbia. If any of you ever flown up there, it's some of the most beautiful countryside and remote I've ever seen. But the Canadians and we would brief together in the morning, and they'd set up the ROE. And basically the ROE was, you come in from the west and you go to the east, and then you turn around and you change direction. They didn't have a specific path, but they had an airspace that was designated. But then they said, we want you at, I don't know what the altitude was, but it was low altitude, but there's a lot of mountains there. And I think it was somewhere around 8,000 or 10,000 feet. And we go, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And it was practice for the AWACS to find us, and then it was practice for the Canadians to intercept us with the F-101s and with the Voodoos. And so we would brief with them, and then we would go, and I think that we had 4 of us up there. We would go into our own briefing room and say, yeah, we're not living by those rules. If the communists come over Canada, they're not going to be a predictable altitude, and we're going to see if these guys are any good. Well, terrain masking is a wonderful thing if you go low level, and we found some excellent valleys and mountains to hide behind or fly up, if you will. So we're said, okay, well, we're going to break the rules, and we're going to do it our way. And we did that, and got back for the first brief, and there were no intercepts, not a single intercept. And although AWACS found us briefly for a couple of times, for the most part, they didn't even see us. So we got back, and we they were going, well, I don't know what happened, but we really couldn't see you. And well, we did. We went west, or we went east, and then we came back west. And so the next day we did the same thing and same rules. Yeah, we're not going to be at a predictable altitude, and came back and debriefed. And my flight lead at the time, I don't know if he had a conscious attack, but he confessed that we were flying low, and man, did we get our asses chewed for evading the AWACS and the voodoo guys. So the next day we did it as we were supposed to, and they found us. But I'll tell you, after all that, we heard back later that because of what we did, they changed their tactics entirely, and how they looked at incoming potential enemy aircraft. So we broke the rules, but everybody learned some lessons from it, and the idea that the Russians or whoever enemy aircraft were going to come in at a higher altitude kind of went out the window, and they adjusted their tactics to see low altitude threats more than high altitude. And my last one, I want to just tell you about the F-100. It was first flown in 1953. I flew it first flew it in 1975. So I was 2 years old when it was had its first flight, and I was 24 years old 22 years later, when I flew it with the Air National Guard in Indiana, and it was a worn out jet when we got them, because many of them were flown in Vietnam. They were Misty Facts. They were just beat up aircraft, and when they came back, the Guard was getting equipped with them, getting rid of F-86s, I think, at the time. And I remember my first couple of years, it was a struggle, because many of the airplanes had bullet holes in them, not on the exterior, but inside. Still had bullet holes that weren't repaired. I remember that soon after we got them and getting them fixed up, there were cracks showing up in the casing of I think it was a Pratt & Whitney J57 engine, and the casings of the engines and it had an afterburner, but the casing were cracking, and the fix for it was to wrap piano wire. So our aircraft were down for a period of time while they came out with a maintenance field team and took piano wire and wrapped around the casing to hold them together. Now, I'm oversimplifying, but it was a TCTO that no kidding used piano wire. We also were learning to fly the F-100, and I learned about adverse yaw. And if none of you have ever experienced it, you basically roll in one direction thinking that's the direction you're going to go, and adverse yaw throws you in the opposite direction, which is a real eye-opener. And we did it in training, so you knew what to expect. So you had to be careful with high G and ailerons, and very much use the rudder. And I can remember looking in a mirror in our F4 at the rudder when we were doing we would do rudder rolls, and those rudders would actually bend. You could see them bend. But I love the F-100. You had to fly it. It was one radio. It was no modern avionics. It was a TACAN, and I mean it was a real stick and rudder kind of jet, if you will. It also had a tendency, if you get it at high angles and high power settings, particularly go into afterburner at a high angle in the air with not a lot of air coming down the intake, you could get a backfire that would send a flame out the front of the nose. So occasionally you'd have flame out the front and flame out the back. If it burped, we call them burps, and of course you had to go to idle to clear it. But that was a real eye-opening experience. I never flew any of these aircraft in combat. Too young for Vietnam, too old for the Gulf War. but they were all magnificent machines. The only sad story is the F-100, unfortunately, was a handful to fly. When I was at my first summer camp back from training, I was on the wing of a guy. We were in Michigan, up at Grayling, Alpena, Michigan, going to attack going to bomb over at the practice bombs over at the Grayling range. And I was flying wing when a guy had, I looked and I was slightly out of position and behind him, and I could see perfect smoke rings come out the back of his jet. They were black and they reminded me of my dad who smoked and would blow perfect smoke rings. And when I first looked at it, I'm like, dang, that's kind of cool. I wonder how he's doing that. Well, there was no technique. His engine was coming apart. He declared an emergency. I flew up next to him and we escorted him back to the base. And but we didn't get far. His airplane, the engine came apart. There was a flame out the back that was just as long as his fuselage. And I remember it vividly to this day because I was a first lieutenant with unbelievable white eyes watching this all come down. And, in training, they told us as lieutenants, I don't want to hear anything out of you except two saying that you're number two in position and lead you're on fire. And I thought it was so ironic that those are the two things I mentioned. They didn't want lieutenants talking on the radio, of course, because we didn't have anything significant to say except lead you're on fire. And I had the opportunity to say that. And I said, lead you're on fire. And he was a little skeptical, but he said, I'm on fire. And I go, yeah, you're on fire. You're on fire. You need to eject. You need to eject. And I could kind of confirm it because we were, as his engine was failing, we were descending and there were pieces of the engine falling out the back of the airplane, landing on the ground, still hot in the northern Michigan woods and starting fires. And after the ejection, I could actually see a short trail of small fires on the ground where the molten engine had come apart and landed. Unfortunately, I saw him eject. The canopy came off. I saw the seat ignite, and I saw him eject. The rocket motor click, on the little exhaust from that. And what amazed me about it is he just barely cleared the tail. I mean, I remember thinking that ejection seat doesn't throw you that high, but it did throw him above the tail of the jet. And then I lost sight of him and I flew in formation as long as I could with the jet until it started clipping the tops of the trees. And he was at a very shallow descent. And you could just initially see the trees break off and go flying. But as the jet slowed and descended, it hit the wider part of the trees, bigger circumference trees, and then that's when it exploded. Sadly, he ejected low. There was a problem with the parachute, and he did not survive, which was devastating at the time for a first lieutenant to be on the wing. But those are my flying stories. Cuddy, thank you for the time. I'm so honored that you guys are on the call and what you do for STEM flights. I so believe in our mission, and I'll just open up to any comments or questions.
Quick question for you, sir. Having flown both varieties, do you prefer General Electric or Pratt & Whitney?
Ha. I prefer General Electric. I flew the Block 25s, and they were Pratt's, but Pratt makes a good engine too. I don't know, no shade on Pratt, but I preferred the General Electric engine. It was more dependable. There was quite a problem with engines with the F-16 in its early days because there was only a single source, and that was Pratt. And so they brought in a second source. There were many F-16s that sat on the ramp, sometimes for months waiting on engine parts. And then they brought GE in and made, I think the Block 30s were GE, the Block 40s were GE, 50s were GE, and that problem went away. I just found them to be more dependable. That's all.
That's the right answer, by the way.
Okay, Steve.
Dave, what aircraft do you fly now? I know you got a couple of different ones. So.
Yeah, so for STEM flights, I have been flying a Columbia 350, which is a four-place, similar to a Cirrus. When I'm going to go any distance, that's what I use. My preferred STEM flight is a Progressive Aerodyne Sea Ray two-place amphibian. If you guys are familiar with that, and it's the kids really love that because we land on water. We do touch and goes on the water, and it's a smaller airplane, but it's way more fun. But I'll tell you, the parents and the kids love the Columbia too. And that's the other thing about STEM flights I wanted to mention. Very few young Eagle parents were involved in a young Eagle flight, but almost every parent or every kid I fly, the parents are involved, at least one of them from start to finish. They stay there. They don't drop them off and say good luck. They're involved, and they and that's reassuring. And then the parents can kind of help with post-flight motivation. And it's good and bad too. Some parents kind of take over a little bit, and then the kid is much different when the parents are away and just with you. And I'm sure some of you found that too. Okay, Cuddy, back to you.
All right, thanks, Dave. So as Dave mentioned, not only is he, the founder, he's intimately involved in what we do every day. We meet once a week, like you mentioned, just to go over, our missions, how many flights have flown, how many flights were scheduled, how many pilots have, signed up and completed the application process. Right now, we have 200 plus active command pilots or pilot mentors. And we have probably another 200 that are like in the orientation process. So some of those will, eventually either process. We try to keep a reminder out on those folks, but, obviously we want to grow. And then we're, as most of you have learned before in some of these meetings or in just your normal interaction with us, we have leading and lagging indicators. Let me turn my video back on. So sometimes we have pilots in areas. We'll give a presentation. We'll have a bunch of pilots join up in one area. Then we have to try to, find students in that area. So we, as Dave mentioned, we have limited funds for marketing. So we try to do a lot of stuff through social media or through word of mouth. Also coordinating with school districts, trying to get schools to, promote STEM flights to their students as an extracurricular activity. And then we do all the coordination and scheduling on that piece. So and then we can have the reverse. We could have an area where a lot of students find out about us, or schools really promoted us, but we don't have a whole lot of pilots in that area. So we'll have to go on the reverse side of that and try to get pilots recruited. And sometimes we reach out, or I'll reach out to you guys and just say, hey, if you're in an area where we have a lot of students, do you mind talking to your local flying club or your FBO, or if we send you brochures, or if there's a pilot association meeting you go to, can you talk about STEM flights and just help kind of give the grassroots efforts to spread the word. As I mentioned earlier, one of our first agenda items that we were going to talk about was the new mentor ship opportunity that we put on our STEM flight following. So I have it up on the sharing right now, the flight following page. We have different resources. So this is where after a student completes a mission, they get the flight following email, the survey, because we survey our students just like we survey our pilots, so we can continue to find what works and continue making improvements. So we have all the different resources, the scholarships, the flight schools, and sometimes we'll get information from you guys. And I'll digress a little bit. I'll talk about Rick Turley. One of our first pilot webinars, he shared his experience on like he provides the students with kind of his own homemade packet resources in the Colorado area, the Fort Collins, or not Fort Collins, but is it Fort Collins, Rick? I'm drawing a blank on. I know you're North Colorado, but so
yeah, Fort Collins.
Yeah, so he provides, and I've shared it with some other pilots recently. Some newer pilots are like, hey, what am I, what can I do to help, shepherd these students along in the mentorship process? So, and Rick has authorized me to share that. So for any of you that don't have that, I can share that. But that's just like a local resource. But we also try to incorporate that local knowledge into our flight following for the kids when they go in. They're looking for scholarship opportunities or museums or other STEM related or aviation related opportunities to continue their aviation adventure. And one of those we just added, which is, you can see at the bottom, it's mentoring, request a mentor. And that came up, one of our pilot mentors is a retired aerospace engineer, which I know we have several. We have a former NASA engineer. He was down in Houston. Now he's up in Minnesota, I believe. But they said, hey, we're available if somebody is curious about an aerospace engineer, career path, and do they want to talk to somebody or speak to somebody for that? Same thing with we have student ambassadors, and some of those students have completed STEM flights. They've gone on to go on into aviation careers. One of the students here locally, I keep mentioning him, but he was just progressing. He was one of our student ambassadors. He just finished his PPL that he got through ROT scholarship, which STEM flights helped him get that scholarship. So I've already been talking to him. He's a junior this year, so he's a private pilot now, and that was part of the STEM flight success. But now he's also a mentor. So if I get a student that says, hey, I want to speak to another student who's been through this process, what did they do? We can give them peer-to-peer mentorship, so they can go on to flight following, go down at the bottom, hit a request, and then we'll try to, just like we do missions, we'll try to pair them up. We'll solicit, our pilots or our students and ask them if who's available to provide this level of mentorship based on what they're asking. So that's a new feature that we're continuing to grow for the student resource side of the house. Are there any questions on that?
Cuddy, this is Rick. The one question I had was, do you already have backgrounds for each of us as pilot mentors, or should we be filling something out to get in the mentoring program, or are you just going to send out an email, and if it matches, we do it?
Yeah, we talked about trying to source everybody first, but we're like, that might, and then you get, send, do we put emails and all the other stuff together? But ultimately, we came to the conclusion that we'll get the request. When we get the request, then I'll just put an email out to the pilot community, our pilot community, to see who has the matching skill set and the time and availability or the inclination to want to do it. Same thing on our student side.
Okay, thanks.
And then, some of you were on the last meeting that we've added a new feature, a new email that goes out that will provide available cities. So there's a link It's the available city link is also on the weekly email that goes out on Monday. And basically the weekly email that goes out on Monday that has available missions, the coding that we wrote into that basically looks at your city and state. And then it takes a geo codes for that, and it does it within 1 degree radius of your geo core. So that's how it kind of matches. So when I'm looking for a student, the program will kind of match you up with that student. Or you'll see a city, you'll hit the request, which I get the request, and sometimes the program will marry you up nicely. Sometimes I have to go in and look, but then there's also an available cities list. So if you didn't get the email or you don't want to go back and you already have the link saved, you can go like, hey, I got some time. Let me go see what's available in my area. You can go hit that available cities link, and it'll basically give you the cities, the city and states of all the missions that we have available. And then you can go to your state and see what missions meet your criteria, if they're close enough for you to request that mission. And are there any questions on that? All right, so I do have a question. So we combined the mission completion form with the survey to try to lessen the amount of emails you get. Is that working out fine for everybody? Are there any questions or comments that you think we should ask or take away from that survey to help make the program evolve and be more efficient?
And Cuddy, I like it, and I would just tell everybody on the call that if you use it and have a recommendation, just email us and we'll consider throwing it in there. It's sort of a work in progress for us, and we want it to be effective and provide some accuracy in our tracking.
Yeah, already our surveys have improved tenfold just by doing that, because now we're it's because it's combined. The survey's right there. It's done. They don't have to go search for it. And the missions are being closed out pretty regularly. I very rarely have to go out and look or send an email. I do a check-in email once a month, just because sometimes somebody will do it. They'll send me an email. Maybe it gets lost in the clutter. But I have a tracker, so I can go immediately see it and know that it's been closed out, so that I can go into the other side of the database and mark the mission complete, so it doesn't show up on the availability list or show up on the ping next time that email goes out, that weekly email. Is there anything that we're doing or not doing for those of you? I know we have quite a few on here that are regular flyers. Within the program that you've seen improved or that we could improve upon? And if there's no question on that, the second part, feel free to give us any anecdotal information or stories that you have.
While we're waiting, I just want to acknowledge Hader. Looks like he's a former F-16 guy too, or maybe a current F-16 guy, Hader.
Oh, hey everybody. No, a former F-16. I've been really, really busy, but I'd like to participate in a program. I still have to finish the application and everything. But yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. And Cuddy, as I was kind of babbling there, maybe what we ought to do with these web airs is every time have a short period allocated for one of our pilots to give their background to everybody else, and maybe eventually rotate it through that at least those that participate in these kind of calls can kind of share their thoughts and backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole point of this too is because we're not like an EAA chapter where we're going to get together in a hangar and we're going to do coffee and donuts, is to kind of bring the pilot community together of STEM flights, so that you can see that we do have pilots all over the country. We have some of the frequent flyers that show up to these as well, but hopefully we'll get more and more that are going to come online. And start also, they'll be able to see the video too, so, so they can also see, everybody that participates. So sometimes peer pressure works well too. When they see other pilots on there, they'll want to get on there and see what they missed or have their opportunity to tell their aviation story.
Good.
And I will say we've had a couple of these where we have had like haters on here. We've had a few people that, because I send it out to all the pilots in orientation, and we did some social media on this one too. And we've gotten a few pilots that, might have been like trying to decide what we're all about. And that's another thing. We're just here to be transparent and provide the information, and hopefully get more pilots and more students flown each year, continue to grow. So that does anybody have any questions about the website, the flight following piece of it? And Hader, the application process is pretty quick. I'll have to go in and look at the database and see when you applied, but everything is on our website now. You can go to the For Pilots, go to our training page. Let's see, pilot training and forums. Go to visit the online training center. All the orientation is right there now, and then all you do is provide a copy of your insurance binder, and then we do a quick background check through TrueHire. I've sent the background check out, and like within 20 minutes gotten a reply back that it was completed, and then you're a pilot mentor, and then we get you up and flying. Where are you located at?
Oh yeah, I'm in Navarre, Florida right now.
Oh, nice. Well, we got some students out in the Florida area.
Perfect. And you
so-
guys, you can do the rental stuff, because I don't own an aircraft.
Yeah, we have pilots who rent aircraft either through their aero club, or they just have renter insurance and they go fly to keep their currencies up, and they'll take students up. Great opportunities, to get up whenever you're trying to get up, and just to stay current. So it's always good to have an eager student in the left seat with you getting a flight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm involved with CAP too, so that would be a great opportunity to add more to.
Awesome.
Yeah. Hey, Hader, I can't resist asking you the question that Steve asked me, since you're an F-16 guy. Which did you prefer, Pratt or GE engines?
We didn't fly with the GE. So we flew 42s and
42s. Okay.
yeah, we flew 52s, and 52s they have 229, which was freaking amazing.
Yeah.
But I have instructors who flew the GE ones, and a couple had a flame out, so I don't know about that.
Okay. There you go, Steve. Thanks,
That's just
Hader.
considered on-the-job stress training.
That
There you
is true.
go.
Yep, there you go.
No, I had previous employment with GE aircraft engines back in the late 80s, and I've always been a little partial towards it. And it just seemed at the time that Pratt would always win the initial fighter engine contracts, everything from F-14s, F-15s, you name it. And then GE would have to come in with a re-engine program to allow the airplane to achieve its potential it was designed for. But that's just my biased viewpoint.
Yeah. Well, a little truth in lending here, Steve. I did some consulting for GE after I retired, GE engines, and really enjoyed it. But it's even before that, the GE was my favorite. So, and I've flown them both. I flew the Block 25s and the 30s and the 40s. So anyway, Cuddy, thank you. Are we wrapping?
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up if we don't have any other questions. I appreciate everybody, coming on. I know Fred, we were trying to get you paired up. We have a student. We had a media event. Fred was going to fly. occasionally we'll have a media event where a media outlet will say, hey, they want to do a story about STEM flights, and we'll try to pair a pilot up with a student in that area. We've done it in Indiana and a few other places as well. And before we go, I'll share my there's me hanging out of a H-65 back in my early enlisted days. So it's not as screaming fast as a mock pulling F-16. Matter of fact, I think I was in Puerto Rico. We were flying when the deployment group, a carrier group, was doing operations off the I think it was Del Cheo Island. We're screaming along at 120, and a couple of F-18s come up next to us. They were probably at stall speed, just trying to, showboat in front of us, as they were like messing with us. But so we're sharing aircraft. Figured I'd show that one.
Awesome. That's great.
The whistling shit can.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Okay, well, that's all we have. Thanks for everybody for showing up today, and we'll do this again probably in about a month and a half. We'll, hopefully get more participation. This one will go up on the website for other pilot mentors to view. And then if you have any topics that you want us to talk about, or anybody you want us to bring on from the organization, just let us know, and I'll also send an email out and solicit that information. But
Great, thanks.
Thanks for everybody. And I'll open it up one last time for any other questions or comments before we go.
All good. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks.
See ya.
You have a good week.